In today's video, we're going over part 3 of how to ride a motorcycle. Now in this video, we're going to be focusing primarily on turning. How to turn, some tips to look out for, and we will go ahead and start that right now. Okay, we're going to get right into this video. I'm going to go ahead and start this bike up here. And we're going to, if you've already watched my previous videos, awesome. If you haven't yet, go check out the first part of this series first. Make sure you understand what you're doing. Make sure you have your gear on. Make sure you have your boots, your gloves, your helmet, and preferably a jacket. Boots are very important because if you're doing these slow maneuvers and you fall on your bike, it's very common. It's not a problem. It happens to a lot of people, most people, if not all. But you want to have protection there, especially in those areas. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to take off and talk about how you turn. So at slow speeds, like we are right now, 10 miles an hour, if I want to turn, I can turn the wheel to the left. Right? I'm turning it to the left. Now the more you turn it, the more it wants to go over, like I just did right there. So I'm going to try to show you that visually. So I'm going to turn it left, and as I turn it left, it's going to want to lean the bike to the right. Okay? So here goes. See how I did that? It leans the bike to the right. And we're going to talk about that more in a later video. That's basically called counter steering. And that's something you're going to need to know about properly steering at high speeds. But for now, just know at slow speeds, you can turn by just turning. And I'm going to slow down a little bit more and use my clutch here. And that's what I'm going to explain as to what I'm doing. But yeah, I can, at slow speeds, I can just turn the wheel. And I have to lean a little bit, but not much, in order to turn the bike. Now, when you get up to higher speeds, you're not turning the wheel at all. You're leaning the bike to turn. But just know that the reason behind that is you have two gyroscopes here, and I'm probably going to go over more of that in the next video. It's actually a really cool thing about physics of how it all works. And your wheels act as gyroscopes. And if you've ever seen that, maybe in school or whatever, sometimes they'll take a bicycle wheel and they'll spin the bicycle wheel and you hold on to it, and the way that if you give torque in different areas, it causes it to do things that you would not expect it to do. Well, that's the same concept here on your bike, and it's what causes you to do different things in how you turn. But for today, we're not going into all of that. We're going to talk about how to primarily use your clutch for turning, and that is the friction zone. So what is the friction zone? The friction zone is, right now I've got it in the friction zone. So what that means is it's not fully engaged and it's not fully disengaged. It's in a midway point. Maybe it's at a 75% engaged point. Anywhere in there is the friction zone. Okay? And the point of it is, if I don't use that, okay, I'm going to let it out. I have to give more gas to keep it from dying. See, if I don't have the clutch engaged and I'm trying to turn here, and it's just like, it's sputtering on me. I can feel it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of jerking on me. So I'm going to put in the clutch a little bit and see how it stops. It's happy now. We want it to be happy. So I don't have it fully engaged. I've got it just slightly pulled in. So I'm going to give it a little more gas. And I don't want you to, it's not good to fully rev your engine up, but, I'm going to show you here for demonstration purposes that you can give it quite a bit of gas. I've got the clutch fully disengaged, meaning, I've got the clutch fully engaged right now, meaning there is no power going to the wheel. I can give it as much gas as I want, and it's not going anywhere. Now, at a 50% or 75% spot, which is where I'm at right now, I can do the same thing. See how much gas I'm giving it? But it's not taking off. And why is that? Because I've got the clutch in that friction zone. So it's important to have control of your bike in turns and in slow maneuvers is to keep it partially engaged. Now, something that you might be worried about, let's pause here for a second, do big brother talk here. So big brother talk, that's what I'm hoping these videos turn out to be for you guys. If you don't have that big brother or friend that knows about motorcycles, I want to be able to throw in some tips here and there. Now, for me, I had driven standard cars before I took my motorcycle safety course, and so I was always worried about being in that friction zone. I knew that in a car, if you gave it a lot of gas constantly and you had the clutch partially engaged, that you can burn the clutch out. And that is true. But with motorcycles, they're built to be able to be in that friction zone. Now, will they burn out? Yes, they still can burn out. But one of the things that they taught us in that safety course that I really took to heart, that helped me to not worry about that so much, is first of all, replacing a clutch is not that big a deal. Second of all, they showed us all the motorcycles that we used there for that training course. They were like 10 years old, 12 years old, and they'd been running their whole life on just training students, doing that friction zone all day long, all weekend, and none of them had ever had to replace a clutch. When he told me that, I quit worrying about that friction zone burning out the clutch. And I want you to do that too. Your safety is more important than worrying about burning out a clutch. Your safety is more important than worrying about burning out your brakes, etc. So don't worry about that part, okay? You want to keep safe. So let's go ahead and put it in first here. Well, let's practice that a little bit more. And I want you to do this in a parking lot. Find you an empty parking lot, and I want you to do what I'm doing. So I've got it partially engaged. See, I gave it quite a bit of gas there, and it's not taken off. Now, if I had that clutch released, it would have taken me like a rocket across here. So it is important for you to know that you don't want to release that clutch, but you do need to learn how to control it at low speeds and not be worrying about the bike dying on you, and then you're stuck in the middle of a turn in the middle of a road with cars. You don't want that to happen. So really practice this until you get this part down. So I'm going to come up here again, and I'm going to give it the gas. Now, I'm giving it way more than is needed. It's just mainly so that you guys can see it. So I'm going to do it a little more naturally here. So this is about what I normally would have probably done. And I'm going to slow down here, hitting the brake, pulling in the clutch, and turning. And then I let the clutch slowly out, give it a little bit of gas. And if you need to slow down through the turn, this is something that I want to emphasize that maybe isn't clear by default. If you want to slow down through the turn, you can definitely use the brake, but you can also use the clutch. Now, it's not going to break your, it's not going to brake like your brake. It's not going to brake like your brake. Of course, it's not. It's not a brake, but it will slowly remove power from the wheels, and sometimes that is better. But just know that that's part of what you need to be doing for slowing yourself down, is just pulling back on that clutch. So I'm slowly releasing the clutch. Now I'm pulling it back in because I kind of want to slow down a little bit more and letting off the gas a little bit, and then it's fully out now. Coming into the turn, brake, slowly pull in. I've got it fully disengaged, fully engaged. I'm so sorry, guys. And now I'm slowly releasing it and coming back out with the gas. Okay? So just practice doing that. You want to stay in that friction zone throughout the turn. And however much power you need, if you need more power, you release the clutch more. If you need less power, you pull it in. You can pull it all the way in and then start slowly hitting your brake if you really need to slow down. Okay? So it's all about the clutch. It's less about the brake, more about the clutch in slow maneuvers like this. Okay? So if you are at a stoplight doing a turn, this is what you would need to know. If you are doing a U-turn, this is what you need to know. Now, we're not going to go over how to do U-turns, but it is very important in order to make those maneuvers to be able to use your clutch properly. So I'm going to demonstrate that. We're going to pretend like we're at a stoplight here. And let's pretend like, and this is something as you get more comfortable that I think you should do, is either get you some cones or use lines, okay? Now, to start off with, you want a wider area to turn into. So I'm going to pretend like I've just started off doing this practice, And this next parking spot and the one after it, I'm going to pretend like is the road. And that's about the size of a road. Start off with that much space. Now I'm here pretty tight close to this. So in order to turn that, I'm going to have to definitely be in the friction zone, because I can't, it's not safe for me to go full out clutch and drive that. That would be way too fast. I need to go in with the friction zone. So I'm going to pull out. I'm in, clutch is partially engaged, and I'm turning. Okay? And I'm going to do this again. Pretend like I'm turning onto this like it's a road. And then I release the clutch here. That whole time during the turn, I've got a partial pull in on the clutch. I'm in that friction zone. Practice like it is an actual street. Now you need to get to where you can do a pretty tight turn. The tighter the turn, the more you need to understand where you're at in the friction zone. So I'm going to do a little tighter one here. Now I'm going to try to pretend like just this parking spot right here is the road line. That's a little more difficult to do because you have to go slower, you have to turn tighter. So here we go, friction zone. Okay. So you need to get to where you can do pretty tight turns, because there are times when things are not in place on the road where they should be. And you want to be able to maneuver in spots where other people are getting into your lane or whatever reason. There's something that jumps in the way and you got to maneuver. It's very important to know. So that is the basics of using the friction zone and turning. I'll tell you, if you master that, that's going to be a very important part of riding your motorcycle. Okay? Next we want to talk about is braking with turns. So I'm not going to go in depth in this video on the advanced parts of braking and turns and doing advanced maneuvers. For one, I probably wouldn't be the right person to do that. I don't go out to the tracks, and so I don't know I don't practice on a daily basis the fastest ways of braking through turns and all that. But for the streets, what you need to know is if you want to make a turn, and this is basically going to come into play after you're in a parking lot, because right now you don't need to even hardly use the brake here in this parking lot. But let's stop here, and let's pretend that around that curve up there is going to be my turn. So where in that turn do I brake? Let me give you some options. Do I brake way back? Do I brake right before? Or do I brake while turning or after turning? You probably know it's not after turning, but the correct answer is before you turn. So now how far back? That's something that takes a little practice to get the feel of, but essentially the idea is you want to be, by the time you reach the turn, by the time you need to start turning your motorcycle, you need to not have to use the brake at all. Now you can use the brake in turns, but it's important that you rarely, if ever, do have to use the brake in turns. If you're going slow enough not to use the brake in turns, it's going to be the safest way to maneuver. So the problem is, if you brake in turns, particularly if you hit that back brake, you're going to lose traction. It's going to cause your back wheel to swing out, and you can lose traction that way. Okay? So you want to make sure you slow down. You have the most traction when you're just going straight, and you're going. So I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna go forward. I'm gonna brake before the turn, and then I'm gonna accelerate out of the turn. Okay. So I'm going up here, braking, and now I let off the brake and turn. Okay? That's what I want you to practice doing. I'm going to get up a little more speed here, braking, and then turning. Now I'm not using the brake at all in this turn. Again, you can lightly use the brake. In particular, the front brake. Lightly push that brake in, but do not, that is the quickest way to get into a wreck, is if you slam on the brake in a turn. And that may be something you're tempted to do if something happens, but if you slam on the brake in the turn, you're most likely going over. Just know that for a fact. One more thing before I forget. When you are in a turn, an important thing, and really actually it doesn't matter if you're in a turn or you're going straight, You never want to slam on your brakes, and this is something I mentioned in the previous video, but I want to explain why. Well, several reasons. You lose traction is what I explained in the last video, but there's another reason. If you don't have anti-lock brakes and you lock that brake up, everybody knows that's bad. In a car, that's bad. In any vehicle, that's bad, because you lose traction. You're now skidding across the ground. It is so much worse on a motorcycle, especially in a turn, but also when you're going straight. And the reason for that is, what keeps you up is that circular motion of your wheels. It actually keeps the bike wanting to stay up. The faster you go on a motorcycle, the faster those wheels are spinning, the more it wants to stay upright, the harder it is to turn it over. I know it sounds crazy, but the faster you go, the harder it is to turn a motorcycle over. But if you are moving at speed and you slam on that brake and it locks that wheel, you no longer have that motion on that wheel, but you're also moving. And guess what? It is real easy for you to fall over. So if you lock your brakes at any point while driving, you no longer have that gyroscopic motion going that's keeping you upright, and you're very likely to fall over. So always remember to gently apply the brakes and don't slam on them. Now we're going to talk about lean angle. Now when you're on a motorcycle, in slowly practicing in a parking lot, it's not near as important, but when you get on the road, it is. So let's go over some things that might be scaring you. New riders are typically afraid of leaning too far. And the reason is, it just feels wrong. It feels like if you lean too far, you're gonna fall over. And basically, you don't have to worry about leaning too far. And let me explain that. The way physics work, and I'm not going to go in depth into this, okay, so bear with me here. The way physics work is the amount of force that's required for you to lose traction in a turn. You have to be leaning the bike more than 45 degrees, okay? Now, most cruisers are not going to lean more than 45 degrees anyway. You're going to hit a peg or something else, and it could scare you. You may see pictures online of people's pegs grinded out. It's because they constantly are hitting them. But this bike, for instance, I believe has 30 degrees that it can lean to the right and 29 to the left. And what that allows is, I have pretty good confidence that if I'm never hitting my pegs, or even if I do hit my pegs, I'm well within that range of full traction on my motorcycle. And it doesn't matter how fast you're going. You may think, well, if I'm going 100 miles an hour, or 80 miles an hour, or 50 miles an hour, there would be a difference, right? Nope. There is no difference. The way physics work is the amount of G's that push you out is only dependent on that lean angle. Now keep in mind, and I'm going to move up here a little bit and kind of show you how I'm turning. When you're turning on a motorcycle, you're not turning by turning the wheel. You're turning by leaning the bike. At very slow speeds, you can turn the wheel, but the primary way you turn is by leaning your bike. And most likely, if you're worried that you're leaning too far, you're not leaning too far, okay? And that's one thing that the instructors in my MSF course tried to get into my head, and it was kind of hard to feel like, oh, it feels like you're going to fall over, or that you're going to skid out, but you're not. Now, if you're going too slow into a turn, you could actually, I mean, you'd have to be going like, you know, a couple miles an hour or something, you're leaned all the way over, you could fall over. But if you're going anything, like I'm going 10 right now, okay? And I am not going to skid out by doing this right here. See, that is no problem. This bike, I could go a lot further. I didn't hit the pegs, so I didn't even hit close to 30 degrees. I can go up to 45 degrees. Okay. That being said, that is in best conditions. That means you got good new tires, there's no gravel, there's no water on the road, nothing. Okay? So take that with a grain of salt. If you do have a bike that'll lean 45 degrees, don't take it to 45 degrees every time. Because if there's a slight bit of dirt on the road, that means maybe you could only have taken it to 44 degrees, so be careful with that. But by a long shot, normally people are more afraid to lean over than really is needed to be worried about. In the rain, it is not as bad as you might think. The first 15 minutes, you know that there is dirt and oil and stuff that's coming up off the ground, and it's very slick then. Be very careful then. But if you have asphalt and it's been raining for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you're out on the road, you're fine. You still lose some traction, but it only goes down the force that you need to be able to turn. It's something like 1.1 G's of lateral force that is required to lose traction at 45 degrees with no rain. Whenever you're in the rain, it's something like 0.9 G's. So it's not a drastic difference. So again, you're still within the safety window of what a cruiser could do if you're riding something like that. And trust me, you can lean the bike much further than you feel like you can. And that's something that they really harped on in our MSF course to get us to turn. I said, guys, come on, you gotta lean. Lean that thing. It's not gonna kill you. So yeah, I'm leaning it quite a bit here, and it almost feels like, wow, that's weird, but you'll get used to it. Just keep practicing. I highly suggest you do like anything like right here. I'm gonna kind of slalom between these. If you have some cones to set out, that works too. But yeah, start doing this. And it's exciting. Congratulations, by the way. You got you a bike. You're learning to ride a motorcycle. Have some stinking fun. That's Big Brother time talking to you there. I'm glad you guys are out there training. I hope this one has been informative and you've learned some things that you didn't know about turning on your motorcycle. And we will catch you in the next one.